A luxury convoy pulls up to a small roadside diner in the suburbs. A billionaire tech mogul steps out, hungry and tired. But what he sees next stops him cold: a skinny child washing dishes with hands too small for the work. The man doesn't know it yet, but this moment will unravel a secret that's been buried for 7 years. A secret that will bring him to his knees. If you believe one act of kindness can change everything, hit that subscribe button right now. You won't want to miss what happens next. And stick around till the end. This story has a twist you'll never see coming. The morning air was cold in the suburbs of Portland, Oregon. Most children were still asleep in warm beds, dreaming soft dreams. But not Liam. He woke up on a thin blanket inside an abandoned storage unit. The walls were concrete. The floor was hard. There was no heat, no light, just the faint glow of dawn creeping through the cracks in the metal door. Beside him, his mother lay still on a worn-out mattress. Her name was Claire. Once she had been full of life. But now kidney disease had stolen her strength. Some mornings she could barely lift her head. Liam sat up slowly. He was only 6 years old, but his eyes carried the weight of someone much older. He looked at his mother and whispered, "I have to find food today. Mommy needs to eat." Claire stirred weakly. Her voice came out soft and broken. "Liam, please be careful out there." "I will, Mommy," he said, squeezing her hand gently before slipping out into the cold morning. The streets were quiet. A few cars passed by. A jogger ran past without looking at him. Liam walked along the sidewalk, his stomach growling, his feet aching in shoes that were too small. He approached a woman carrying a shopping bag. "Excuse me, ma'am, do you have any food? I'm really hungry." She glanced at him, frowned, and kept walking. He tried again with a man unlocking his car. "Sir, please, just a little help." The man waved him off without a word. One after another, people turned away. Some looked at him with pity. Others looked at him like he was invisible. A few even looked annoyed, as if his presence was an inconvenience. Liam's chest felt tight. His eyes stung, but he didn't cry. He had learned not to. Crying didn't bring food. Crying didn't help his mother. So he kept walking. After what felt like hours, he saw a small diner at the corner of a tree-lined street. The sign above it read, "Rosie's Corner." Smoke rose gently from the kitchen vent. The smell of eggs and toast filled the air. Liam's stomach twisted with hunger. He didn't walk inside. He knew better than that. Instead, he sat down on a wooden bench just outside the diner. He folded his small hands on his lap and waited. Waited for someone. Anyone. Waited for a miracle he wasn't sure would come. Inside the diner, Rosie Bennett wiped down tables after the breakfast rush. She was 25, with tired eyes and calloused hands. She owned this place, but just barely. Rent was high. Business was slow. And her dream of going back to college felt further away every month. But she kept going. She had to. As she carried a stack of dishes to the sink, something outside caught her eye. A little boy, sitting alone on the bench. His clothes were too big for him. His face was too thin. Rosie paused. She set the dishes down and walked outside. "Hey there," she said gently, kneeling down so she could look him in the eye. "What's your name?" The boy looked up slowly. "Liam." "Liam," she repeated with a small smile. "I'm Rosie. Are you waiting for someone?" He shook his head. Then, "Why are you sitting out here all alone?" Liam looked down at his hands. His voice was barely a whisper. "I'm hungry." Those 2 words hit Rosie harder than she expected. She stood up quickly. "Wait right here." She went inside, scooped a plate full of scrambled eggs, toast, and a little bit of bacon, and brought it back outside. "Here you go, sweetheart," she said, handing it to him. But Liam didn't start eating. Instead, he looked up at her with wide, serious eyes. "Miss Rosie, do you have a container? Like a to-go box?" Rosie blinked. "A to-go box? Why? I want to take it home." Her heart sank. "Liam, aren't you hungry right now?" "I am," he said quietly. "But my mommy is hungrier." Rosie felt her throat tighten. She nodded slowly, went back inside, and packed the food into a container. When she came back out, she handed it to him carefully. "Here, hold it tight, okay?" "Thank you, Miss Rosie. Thank you so much." And before she could say another word, Liam stood up and ran off down the street, clutching the container like it was made of gold. Rosie stood there, watching him disappear around the corner. Her chest felt heavy. Her mind raced with questions. Who is this child? Where does he live? Why is he out here alone? She didn't know it yet, but that moment, that one small act of kindness, was the beginning of something much bigger than she could ever imagine. That evening, Liam returned to the storage unit. He pushed open the heavy metal door and slipped inside. "Mommy, I'm back," he whispered. Claire turned her head weakly. "Liam, did you find something?" He nodded and carefully opened the container. He scooped some food onto a cracked plastic plate and knelt beside her. "Here, Mommy. Eat." Claire's hands shook as she tried to lift the spoon. Liam gently took it from her and began feeding her, one small bite at a time. "Where did you get this?" she asked softly. "A lady named Miss Rosie. She has a diner. She gave it to me when I told her I was hungry." Tears filled Claire's eyes. God bless her. God bless that woman. After Claire had eaten, Liam took a little food for himself and sat on the floor in the corner. He ate slowly, staring out the small window at the fading daylight. He thought about school, about the other kids his age who were probably doing homework or playing games. He missed learning. He missed laughing. But those days felt far away now. Claire watched him from across the room. "Liam," she said softly. "Come here." He crawled over and lay beside her. She wrapped her weak arm around him. "You're so brave," she whispered. "I'm so sorry you have to do this." "It's okay, Mommy," Liam said, even though it wasn't. "I'll take care of you." And in that cold, dark storage unit, mother and son held each other until sleep finally came. The next morning, Liam returned to Rosie's diner. And the morning after that. And the morning after that. Each time, Rosie gave him food. Each time, he asked to take it home. And each time, Rosie's heart broke a little more. After 3 weeks, she couldn't take it anymore. She had to know. One afternoon, after Liam had helped her wash a few dishes, something he insisted on doing, Rosie sat down beside him. "Liam," she said gently, "can I meet your mom?" He looked up, surprised. You want to meet her?" "Yes. I want to see how she's doing. If that's okay." Liam thought for a moment, then nodded. "Okay, I'll ask her." That evening, Liam told Claire about Rosie's request. Claire's eyes filled with tears. "She wants to meet me?" she whispered. "Yes, Mommy. She's really nice." Claire smiled weakly. Tell her she can come." 2 days later, Rosie followed Liam down a quiet street, past a chain-link fence, and into an old industrial lot. When they reached the storage unit, Rosie's breath caught in her throat. "This is where they live." Liam pushed open the door. "Mommy, Miss Rosie is here." Rosie stepped inside. The space was dark, cramped, and cold. And there, lying on a thin mattress, was a woman who looked far too young to be so sick. "Hello," Claire said weakly. "You must be Rosie." Rosie knelt beside her, her eyes already wet. "Yes, ma'am. I've been feeding Liam. I wanted to meet you." Claire reached out and touched Rosie's hand. "Thank you. Thank you for caring about my son." Rosie shook her head. "He's a good boy. The best I've ever met." They talked for a while. Claire told her story, the sickness, the bills, the eviction. Rosie listened, her heart breaking with every word. When Rosie finally left that night, she made a silent promise. "I won't let them go through this alone." She didn't know how she would help. She barely had enough to help herself. But she knew one thing for certain. Some people come into your life for a reason. And sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can change everything. Somewhere high above the clouds, a private jet cut through the sky. Inside, the cabin was quiet, luxurious, and dimly lit. Soft leather seats. Polished wood panels. A bottle of expensive wine sat untouched on the table. And in one of those seats, staring out the window, was a man named Elliot Graves. He was in his early 30s, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit. His watch cost more than most people made in a year. His company was worth billions. But none of that mattered right now. Because Elliot Graves was haunted. He looked down at the glass of wine in his hand and whispered to himself, "I'm finally going home. Home. Portland, Oregon. The place he left 7 years ago with nothing but a scholarship and a dream. The place where he left behind the only woman he ever truly loved. Her name was Claire." Elliot closed his eyes and let the memories wash over him. They met in college. She was studying business. He was studying computer science. She had this laugh that could light up a whole room. And when she smiled at him for the first time, he knew his life would never be the same. They fell in love quickly. They dreamed together. They planned together. And when Elliot got accepted into a graduate program overseas, Claire was the first person he told. "This is amazing, Elliot," she had said, her eyes shining with pride. "You have to go. But the visa fees, the travel costs." "I don't have that kind of money," he admitted, his voice heavy with frustration. Claire didn't hesitate. She reached into her savings, money she had been putting away for years, and handed it to him. "Take it," she said. "You're going to do great things. I believe in you." Elliot had tried to refuse, but she insisted. And so, with her help, he left for Europe. For the first 2 weeks, they talked every single day. Video calls, text messages, voice notes. He would tell her about his classes. She would tell him about her day. They made plans for the future. And then everything fell apart. Elliot was walking home late one night when 3 men jumped him in a dark alley. They took his phone, his wallet, everything. He reported it to the police, but nothing ever came of it. And just like that, he lost all his contacts. He didn't have Claire's number memorized. He didn't have her email written down anywhere. He tried to find her on social media, but she had deactivated her accounts months before. He tried reaching out to mutual friends, but most of them had moved on, changed numbers, lost touch. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into years. Elliot worked. He studied. He built something from nothing. He co-founded a tech company with 2 classmates. They developed a software application that revolutionized cloud computing. Within 5 years, they were worth billions. But no matter how successful he became, no matter how much money he made, there was always a hole in his heart. A hole shaped like Claire. And now, after 7 long years, he was finally coming back. Not just to visit, but to find her. The plane began its descent. Elliot straightened in his seat and looked out the window as the city came into view. "I'm coming, Claire," he whispered. "I'm coming to bring you home." When the plane landed, a convoy of black SUVs was waiting on the tarmac. Elliot's security team moved quickly, opening doors, loading luggage, securing the perimeter. Elliot slid into the back seat of the lead vehicle. His driver glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "Where to, sir?" "The old neighborhood," Elliot said quietly. "Maple Street. I need to find someone." The driver nodded and pulled out onto the highway. They drove through the city, past familiar landmarks, past old coffee shops and parks where he and Claire used to walk. Everything looked the same, but everything felt different. When they reached Maple Street, Elliot stepped out of the SUV and walked slowly down the sidewalk. His heart was pounding. His hands were shaking. He reached the old apartment building where they used to live. It looked smaller than he remembered. The paint was peeling. The gate was rusted. He knocked on the door of the ground floor unit. An elderly woman answered. She squinted at him for a moment, then her eyes went wide. "Elliot," she said, her voice filled with shock. "Is that really you?" "Mrs. Callahan," Elliot said with a small smile. "Yes, it's me." She stepped outside and looked him up and down. "My goodness. You've changed. You look successful." "I've been blessed," he said humbly. "Mrs. Callahan, I'm looking for someone. A woman named Claire. She used to live upstairs. Do you know where she is?" The old woman's face fell. She looked down at her hands and sighed deeply. "Oh, Elliot," she said softly. "You don't know, do you?" His stomach dropped. "Know what?" "After you left, Claire found out she was pregnant." Elliot's world stopped. "Pregnant," he whispered. Mrs. Callahan nodded. "She had a baby boy. Beautiful child. But then she got sick. Very sick. Kidney failure, they said. She couldn't work anymore. Couldn't pay rent. One day, she just disappeared. Packed up what little she had and left. Nobody knows where she went." Elliot felt like he couldn't breathe. His vision blurred. His legs felt weak. "A son," he whispered. "I have a son." Mrs. Callahan touched his arm gently. "I'm sorry, Elliot. I wish I knew where they were." Elliot swallowed hard. He nodded, thanked her, and walked back to his SUV in a daze. When he climbed inside, his driver looked at him with concern. "Sir, are you all right?" Elliot stared straight ahead. "No," he said quietly. "But I will be. Because I'm going to find them. No matter what it takes." Over the next few days, Elliot searched everywhere. He hired private investigators. He checked hospitals. He visited shelters. But there was no trace of Claire or his son. One night, sitting alone in the penthouse suite of a luxury hotel, Elliot felt the weight of it all crash down on him. He imagined Claire, sick and struggling, carrying his child. He imagined her giving birth alone. He imagined his son growing up without a father. And he realized something. There were probably hundreds, maybe thousands, of people in this city going through the same thing. Sick, struggling, invisible. So he made a decision. If he couldn't find Claire yet, he would help people like her. He would donate to hospitals. He would fund treatment for those who couldn't afford it. He would make sure no one else had to suffer the way she did. The next morning, Elliot called his driver. Find me a hospital. Somewhere off the beaten path. Somewhere people are forgotten. His driver made some calls and sent him an address later that afternoon. Elliot gathered his security team, climbed into the lead SUV, and they set off. They drove for nearly an hour, deep into the suburbs. The roads grew narrower. The houses grew older. This was the kind of neighborhood most people drove through without stopping. But Elliot wasn't most people. As they drove, his stomach began to growl. He realized he hadn't eaten since the night before. Pull over, he said suddenly. I need food. The driver slowed down, scanning the area. There were no fancy restaurants here. No cafes. Just a few small shops and… There, Elliot said, pointing. That diner. It was a modest place. A little rundown, but clean. Smoke rose from the kitchen. A wooden bench sat outside. The sign above the door read, Rosie's Corner. The convoy pulled up in front of the diner. All 4 vehicles. Doors opened. Security stepped out first. And then Elliot emerged, tall and composed, his expensive shoes crunching on the gravel. But before he could walk inside, something caught his eye. A small boy, maybe 6 or 7 years old. Skinny. Quiet. Washing dishes beside the diner with hands that looked too small for the work. Elliot stopped in his tracks. The boy worked with intense focus, scrubbing each plate carefully, his little face serious and determined. Something about him struck Elliot deep in his chest. He didn't know why, but he couldn't look away. Slowly, Elliot walked toward the boy. Hey there, he said gently. The boy looked up, startled. What's your name? Elliot asked. The boy hesitated, then said softly, Liam. Elliot smiled. Liam. That's a strong name. Before he could say anything else, a young woman stepped outside. She wiped her hands on her apron and looked at Elliot with cautious curiosity. Good afternoon, sir, she said politely. Welcome to Rosie's Corner. What can I get for you? But Elliot wasn't looking at her. He was still looking at Liam. Why isn't he in school? Elliot asked quietly. Rosie's smile faded. She glanced at Liam, then back at Elliot. Because life is hard for him, she said simply. His mom is very sick. They can't afford school fees. They can't afford much of anything. Elliot's jaw tightened. He looked down at Liam again, and something inside him shifted. Can I meet her? He asked. His mother. Rosie's eyes narrowed. Why? Elliot met her gaze. Because I came here to help people who are struggling. And it sounds like she needs help. Rosie studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. All right, she said. But I'm coming with you. Of course, Elliot said. Rosie locked up the diner, took Liam's hand, and led them both to one of the SUVs. As they drove deeper into the industrial district, Elliot's heart began to race. He didn't know why, but something told him his life was about to change. They pulled up to an old storage facility. Liam hopped out and led them to a metal door. This is where we live, he said quietly. Elliot's chest tightened. He stepped inside and froze. There, lying on a thin mattress in the corner, was a woman. Weak. Pale. Struggling to breathe. But Elliot would have recognized her anywhere. Claire, he whispered. Her eyes fluttered open. And when she saw him, her breath caught. Elliot. The room went silent. And in that moment, 7 years of pain, longing, and unanswered questions came crashing down. Elliot stood frozen in the doorway of the storage unit, staring at the woman he thought he'd lost forever. Claire's eyes filled with tears. Her lips trembled. Elliot, is it really you? He rushed forward and dropped to his knees beside her. His hands hovered over hers, afraid to touch her, afraid she might disappear. It's me, he whispered. I'm here. I'm really here. Behind them, Rosie stood in shock, her hand covering her mouth. Liam looked confused, his small eyes darting between his mother and this strange man in the expensive suit. But Elliot didn't have time for explanations. Not yet. He turned sharply toward his security team waiting outside. Get her to a hospital. Now. The best one in the city. Move. 2 guards rushed in with a stretcher they kept in the vehicle for emergencies. They lifted Claire as gently as they could. She tried to speak, but her voice was too weak. Wait, Liam, she managed. He's coming with us, Elliot said firmly. Everyone is coming. Rosie grabbed Liam's hand. Come on, sweetheart. We're going to help your mom. They all piled into the SUVs. Elliot rode in the vehicle with Claire, holding her hand the entire way. Rosie and Liam sat in another car, both silent, both overwhelmed. The convoy sped through the streets, sirens clearing the path. Within 20 minutes, they arrived at Portland General Hospital, the most advanced medical facility in the state. Doctors and nurses swarmed Claire the moment they arrived. They rushed her into the emergency wing. Elliot followed as far as they'd let him, barking orders like a general. Run every test. I want a full diagnosis. Get your best nephrologist. Cost is not an issue. Do you understand me? Cost is not an issue. A senior doctor nodded quickly. Yes, Mr. Graves. We'll take care of her. Elliot stood outside the double doors, breathing hard, his hands shaking. He ran his fingers through his hair and let out a shaky breath. I found her. After all these years, I found her. Rosie and Liam sat together in the waiting room. Liam's small legs dangled from the chair. He looked scared. Miss Rosie, he whispered. Is Mommy going to be okay? Rosie squeezed his hand. I think so, sweetheart. That man, he's going to help her. Who is he? Liam asked. Rosie didn't know how to answer. Hours passed. The sun set outside the hospital windows. Finally, a doctor emerged from the emergency wing, holding a clipboard. Mr. Graves. Elliot shot to his feet. Yes. How is she? The doctor's face was serious but calm. She's stable. But her condition is critical. She has advanced kidney failure. She needs a transplant as soon as possible. Without it, he paused. I'm not sure how much time she has. Elliot's jaw clenched. Then we do the transplant. Where? When? What do you need? We'd recommend an international facility. There's a hospital in Switzerland with one of the best transplant programs in the world. But the wait list. I don't care about wait lists, Elliot interrupted. I'll pay whatever it takes. Book it. Tonight. The doctor nodded. I'll make the calls. Elliot turned to his assistant, who had just arrived. Charter a medical jet. Get the best surgical team money can buy. I want her on a plane within 48 hours. Yes, sir. Then Elliot did something that surprised everyone. He turned to the doctor and said quietly, Test me. The doctor blinked. I'm sorry. Test me, Elliot repeated. For compatibility. I want to be her donor. The doctor hesitated. Mr. Graves, kidney donation is a serious procedure. It requires. I know what it requires, Elliot said firmly. Test me. Now. Within an hour, Elliot's blood was drawn. Within 2 hours, the results came back. He was a match. When the doctor told him, Elliot closed his eyes and let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Schedule it, he said. As soon as she's stable enough to travel, we do the surgery. The doctor nodded. Understood. Elliot walked back to the waiting room, where Rosie and Liam were still sitting. He knelt down in front of the boy. Liam, he said gently, your mom is going to be okay. I promise. Liam looked at him with big, hopeful eyes. Really? Really? Then Elliot stood and turned to Rosie. Thank you. For everything you've done for them. Rosie shook her head. I didn't do much. You did more than you know, Elliot said. And I want to help you too. Where do you live? Rosie hesitated. I have a small place. It's fine. Is it safe? She didn't answer. Elliot nodded. I'm getting you an apartment. A good one. And I'm going to help you with your diner. Rosie's eyes went wide. Sir, you don't have to. Yes, I do, Elliot said. You saved my family. Let me do this. Rosie's throat tightened. She nodded, unable to speak. Elliot turned to one of his guards. Take them to my house. Make sure they have everything they need. Yes, sir. As Rosie and Liam were led away, Liam looked back at Elliot one last time. There was something in the boy's eyes, something that made Elliot's chest ache. He doesn't know yet. He doesn't know who I am. 3 days later, Claire was stable enough to travel. She and Elliot were flown to Zurich on a private medical jet. The surgery was scheduled immediately. Elliot lay on the operating table, staring up at the bright lights. A nurse squeezed his hand. You're very brave, Mr. Graves, she said softly. He shook his head. No, I'm just trying to make up for lost time. The anesthesia began to take effect. His vision blurred. And the last thing he thought before everything went black was, please let this work. Please. The surgery took 6 hours. Both Elliot and Claire survived. 2 weeks later, they were recovering in side-by-side hospital rooms. Elliot was the first to wake. His body ached, but he didn't care. He pushed himself out of bed, ignoring the nurse's protests, and walked slowly to Claire's room. She was awake, sitting up. Her face had color again. Her eyes were clear. When she saw him, she started to cry. Elliot, she whispered. You gave me your kidney. He sat down gently on the edge of her bed. Of course I did. But why? She asked. After all these years, why would you do this for me? Elliot took her hand. Because I never stopped looking for you, Claire. Not for one single day. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. But you left. You disappeared. I thought you forgot about me. Never, Elliot said, his voice breaking. I was mugged 2 weeks after I got to London. They stole my phone. I lost all my contacts. I tried everything to find you. I called the university. I searched online. But no one knew where you went. Claire covered her mouth. I didn't know. I know, Elliot said softly. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry I wasn't there when you needed me. Claire reached up and touched his face. You're here now. Elliot leaned forward and pressed his forehead against hers. I'm never leaving again. They sat like that for a long time, holding each other, crying healing. Finally, Claire pulled back. Elliot, there's something you need to know. I know, he said quietly. Mrs. Patterson told me. You had a baby. Claire's eyes widened. You know about Liam? Yes. Elliot. Her voice trembled. He's yours. Liam is your son. Elliot closed his eyes. He'd known. Deep down, he'd known from the moment he saw the boy. But hearing it out loud still hit him like a freight train. I want to meet him, Elliot said. Properly. I want to tell him the truth. Claire nodded. Okay. 2 weeks later, they were discharged. They flew back to Portland together. When they arrived at Elliot's mansion, Liam and Rosie were waiting. Liam ran to his mother the moment he saw her. Mommy, you're walking. Claire laughed and scooped him into her arms. Yes, baby. I can walk again. Rosie stood to the side, smiling through tears. After the excitement died down, Claire took Liam's hand and led him to the living room. Elliot followed. They all sat down together. Liam, Claire said gently, there's something I need to tell you. Liam looked at her with wide, curious eyes. What is it, Mommy? Claire glanced at Elliot, then back at her son. This man, Elliot, he's not just someone who helped us. He's your father. Liam blinked. His mouth opened slightly. He looked at Elliot, then back at his mom. My father, he whispered. Elliot moved closer and knelt down in front of him. Yes, Liam. I know I wasn't there before. I know I missed so much. But I'm here now. And I promise you, I'm never leaving again. Liam stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached out and touched Elliot's hand. Okay, he said quietly. Elliot's eyes filled with tears. He pulled Liam into a hug, holding him tightly. Rosie watched from the doorway, her heart full. Over the next few weeks, everything changed. Elliot bought Rosie a beautiful apartment in a safe neighborhood. He hired a contractor to renovate her diner and expand it into a full restaurant. And he paid for her to go back to college. When Rosie saw the sign above her new restaurant, Rosie's Kitchen, she broke down crying. I don't know how to thank you, she said. Elliot smiled. You already did. You saved my family. A month later, Elliot took Claire to dinner at a fancy restaurant overlooking the city. After dessert, he got down on one knee. Claire, he said, his voice steady. I lost you once. I'm never losing you again. Will you marry me? Claire's hands flew to her mouth. Tears streamed down her face. Yes, she whispered. Yes, Elliot. 1,000 times yes. They were married 2 months later in a beautiful ceremony. Liam stood beside Elliot as his best man, wearing a tiny suit that made him look like a little prince. After the wedding, Elliot made arrangements for them to move abroad. He wanted Liam to grow up with opportunities. He wanted Claire to have access to the best healthcare. He wanted them to start fresh. On their last day in Portland, they went to visit Rosie. She hugged them all tightly. I'm going to miss you, she said. We'll visit, Claire promised. And we'll call all the time. Liam hugged Rosie the longest. Thank you for feeding me, Miss Rosie. Rosie kissed the top of his head. You're welcome, sweetheart. You take care of your mom and dad, okay? I will. As they drove away, Rosie stood outside her restaurant, watching them go. She smiled through her tears. One act of kindness, she thought. That's all it took. She had fed a hungry child. And that one act had changed everything, for him, for his mother, and for her. She turned and walked back into her restaurant, ready to start the next chapter of her life. And somewhere across the ocean, Elliot, Claire, and Liam began theirs. Together. Finally. Forever. This story reminds us of something powerful. Kindness is never wasted. Rosie didn't know that the little boy she fed would lead her to a future she never dreamed of. She didn't know that one plate of food would unlock miracles. But that's how kindness works. It doesn't ask for rewards. It doesn't demand recognition. It just gives. And somehow, someway, it always comes back. So here's the question. What small act of kindness can you do today? Maybe it's buying a meal for someone who's hungry. Maybe it's listening to someone who feels alone. Maybe it's just smiling at a stranger who looks like they need hope. You never know how far your kindness will go. You never know whose life you might change. So go out there and be the light someone needs. Because in the end, love always wins. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever experienced a random act of kindness that changed your life? I'd love to hear your story. And don't forget, subscribe and turn on that notification bell because I've got more incredible, heartwarming stories coming your way very soon. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, keep spreading kindness. Keep believing in miracles. And remember, your story matters. See you in the next one.